are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Awesome.
I was having a look around when I came in. We're situated in your lovely studio
Yeah,
down
thanks
in
very much.
the Leith Depot.
Yeah.
Is it something you've kind of built up over time, the studio? Have you kind
Yeah, so I moved in here. I was trying to think of this the other day, actually. I think it was about 5.5 years ago. I've been in here now. And when I moved in, it was actually... So this is kind of been passed down different people. So it was... All these rooms are already built, which is handy, obviously. And it'd been running as a studio for, I don't know, a good 15 years or something like that. Yeah, all the rooms were already built. And I just kind of moved all my stuff in and kind of did a wee bit of decorating and hanging fairy lights. And
What did it used to be before it was a studio?
Before it was a studio, so there's a lighthouse at the end of this unit. So basically a lighthouse, and then there's a big warehouse, which is what we're situated in just now. And it was owned by the Scottish Water Board or Waterfront or something like that. And I think it was... I've tried to kind of look up the history of this, but I think it was a test lighthouse because we're not actually on the coast here.
We're close by, but yeah,
we're close by, but we're not on
it.
the coast, so it's kind of a bit weird to have a lighthouse there. So as far as I'm aware, they were using that as a sort of testing, and this was like the big warehouse where they'd keep everything in it. And this actual room that we're in just now, minus the divisions, so when this was like a room, it's a concrete shell where apparently they kept explosive stuff. So if there was a fire in here, it'd be contained into this room only, and it wouldn't burn the whole building down, which kind of helps to keep, I guess, sound in here as to a certain extent, and also heat, because it's a big old building, so it kind of keeps it cozy in here and kind of stuff. But obviously this is a room built inside of that.
When did it get turned into a studio?
I couldn't tell you the exact date, but yeah, roughly 15, maybe 16, 17 years ago, it opened as the Lighthouse Studio by a guy called Manny, who built all the rooms. And funnily enough, like my band back when we were however old at that time, 16, 17, were due to record in here.
Which band was?
We were called The Void at the time. So that turned into The Winter Tradition, which was my last band. And we were due to record with Manny in this room. It ended up falling through for whatever reason, but it's quite funny how we're here now.
How many bands have you been? Was it just the two? Or
Yeah, so The Winter Tradition was my band. We started that, under a different name, but the same sort of, we progressed and all the rest of it. But it was the same band. We started that when I was 14, 31 now. So we were in that band for about 14 years.
Wow.
Which was great. It was good fun, and we're all at school together and kind of built up, and all the sort of rock nights at school and kind of going through that. And then when we left school, we kept it going, and that's how I got into recording and producing music, is recording my own band during school. We had a small recording studio at our school in Edinburgh, and
just quite a natural progression, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, and just kind of worked on my own band stuff. And Ewan, who was a singer in The Winter Tradition and is the bassist in my band just now, Folda, him and I used to just sit in the studio and try and recreate our favourite songs. So we were really into bands like Jimmy Eat World and Death Cab for Cutie and stuff like that, and just try and figure out how they were making things sound like they did. So we would try and recreate a song, but try and recreate it exactly, or as close as we could get it to, and figure out how do we get the kick drum to sound like this, and just experimenting with things.
You must have learned a lot from doing that, though.
Yeah, it was good fun. And I mean, our grades took a hit because we just used to spend all our time in the... And I say recording studio was like a tiny wee room with it was an analog desk, but it went straight onto a hard disk recorder, and then you had to export it onto minidisk. Remember, you're probably too young for minidisk, so it wasn't like...
Is it like floppy disk? Or?
Yeah, kind of. It was like I don't even know why they came up with minidisk. It was kind of after CD, and they were trying to... I guess I don't even know, but it was onto minidisc. It was like a wee hard sort of mini disc that kind of flopped after a couple of years. But yeah, for some reason the studio burnt everything to minidisc, so we had to take it away on minidisc and then try and convert it to other things to actually listen to it.
Have you still got them, the minidiscs? So
probably my dad's probably got them somewhere. He's quite a collector of all these things. Everything I've done in a band, my dad's got it somewhere. So probably.
Are you the same? Are you quite same?
Not as much. I mean, I try in the studio. I collect things, as you can kind of see around the place. But I don't know. Yeah, I've still probably got. I probably still have everything from bands that I've personally been in somewhere, in an attic somewhere or whatever. I actually found the banner for. We had a big... This is The Winter Tradition, my last band. A big show at probably our biggest show that we'd ever done in Edinburgh, the Liquid Rooms. we got this huge banner made up for it, and I found that in my attic the other night.
Well, like that would like hang behind the stage.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, it was massive. It was probably the size of this whole wall.
Did you do caves as well?
We played the caves, but it wasn't like a headline show. Like our biggest one was the Liquid Rooms, and we almost sold the Liquid Rooms out with the balcony and everything now, which was quite.
That's pretty good. That was that
700, just under 700. I think we had about 650 there, or just over 600 or something like that.
That'd be nowadays. You would have just called it a sellout.
Yeah, I know. We were like, I think we did call it a sellout on all our sort of press things, and it looked, we had it all filmed and stuff like that, and it looked like it was sold out. So yeah, we called it a sold out. But like that was our first show that we thought about like the production as a whole. So we had like we had a lighting guy that came in and like a full show designed for it, and a banner, and like down to like everything. So we used to, like, a good friend of mine used to do front of house for us, and we had a guitar tech, and we got a bit obsessed about trying to make everything as clean as possible, and like no cables anywhere, and like probably spent more time designing that than actually writing songs and practicing.
That's carried into Folda a bit as well, because like, if you look at your like live setup,
yeah,
as well as like the music videos and stuff you've done, like the high kind of quality of production for them.
Yeah, like after the winter, we kind of called the winter tradition a day when I was 28, so like about 3 years ago now. And David, who's the singer in Folda, and I'd been I'd worked with David on like his solo stuff before, and just really liked his songwriting for a start, and his voice. I thought it was like definitely like one of the best guys around. So kind of like got chatting to him about writing songs, and that's how we started Folda, which is him and I writing, like bouncing ideas off each other and trying to write. We were trying to write pop music from like a guitar-based background. Both of us always played in like rock bands and guitar stuff, and so we tried to push ourselves out of that comfort zone a wee bit and write pop music. And a big part of that for me was trying to, like, if I was going to start another band, I wanted to start it like fresh slate and have everything kind of exactly the way we want it from the beginning.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was kind of, again, with the music videos, we knew Stuart Bredner, who did all our last band's stuff. So we already had a strong connection there with him. He's great. He's done lots of great stuff. So we called upon him, and he did a great music video for us, and we had all the live stuff down. We used the same lighting engineer that we all had for the last band, and it kind of fell into place pretty quickly, which was quite nice. And we wanted to try and jump to a pretty decent size of production show as our first show.
Yeah. So
we had a full lighting rig for our first show. We tried to make it as like professional, I guess, as possible. And I'm really into all the geeky stuff about trying to work out how to sync lights to drums, or stuff like that. Like,
whereabout was the first show?
The first show we ever played was actually in Aberdeen, supporting the Daikinis. If you remember them, you're probably too young as well. This is showing my age now. So we'd booked our first headline show at the Mash House in Edinburgh. So that's like I think it's like a 300 cap venue, or just under 300 cap.
Yeah, it's about that, I think.
And we'd all played there before in various different bands, and we knew this sort of how it was going to work. So we booked that, and then got offered these 2 shows with the Daikinis beforehand. So we kind of used them as like tester runs of the set. So it was the Tunnels in Aberdeen was the very first one.
It's a good venue to kind of, it probably suits your sound quite well
yeah,
as well.
Yeah, and we know, like, again, Ross, the booker up there, we've known him for years. So it was kind of, although it was a new band, we knew everyone up there, and it was kind of, it just felt kind of natural to do that, It was a good show. We got to play in front of a sold out audience for our first show, which was, looking back, probably quite could have gone wrong. but yeah, it went well, and it kind of got everyone into, we'd been rehearsing we'd probably had the songs written and rehearsed for about a year before we actually played, but we just wanted to, as I said, like, iron out everything and kind of
almost have it be perfect.
Yeah, like try and be as good as we can be, so we didn't have to sort out, we'd like to have thought we'd sorted out all the stuff before actually coming out live.
Had you recorded anything before you did the first show? Yeah.
So the way David and I write is actually in front of a computer. So we kind of record the songs as we're writing them, it takes a while to do, but it means that, we've got the songs recorded after we finish writing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of our like live stuff, it's not really a band that we can all get in a room together and like jam. I hate the word jam, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of it's computer-based stuff, and it's a lot about the sounds
and the production of it as
well.
Yeah,
which we create on a computer, and then it's definitely about how we bring that live rather than all in a room trying to create something live. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess a lot of it's about the atmosphere as well.
Yeah.
Like with that kind of music, you almost create like a world, like a sonic soundscape, and then
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, a lot of
flip
that,
out
a lot of
with
the
it in
Folda stuff starts with like, we'll be messing around on a synth and just come across a good sound, and that'll like inspire us to write something on that sound. And that'll just like usually just ends up being a layer underneath it, or like even just like a drone that goes through the whole song, but it's kind of inspired the whole track. But it does take a while doing it that way because it doesn't sound like a song straight away. You know, if you're in a band, in a room with a band, you can make it sound like music quite quickly because you've
yeah.
got guys there doing it. And so,
Is it tougher to translate it to live though?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's that was one of the biggest tasks that we had after when we decided to do it as a band, because initially we didn't know if we were going to do it as a band or we were just going to write music and just release music, or if we were even going to play it live. But we kind of liked the idea of doing pop music but played by a band. It was quite a task to try and figure out what equipment we needed to do it, and then how the hell we were going to do it, and without spending £1 million on
Yeah.
it, you know.
How long did it take you to kind of crack it and figure out?
It was probably like 6 to 9 months to try and like
Cool.
from like start to finish of like, okay, this is what we think we need, and trialing stuff out and be like, actually no, we don't need that, we need this instead, and building it all up. Because we'd worked with the last band, we were doing a lot bigger shows obviously, but we'd kind of gone through stages to get to where we wanted. And as I said before, like we wanted Folda to almost start it where that ended in terms of like production. So we were all on in-ear monitors before, which is like, I don't know if you know what they are, but like
Makes a massive difference.
Yeah,
and
and it's
click and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So we play to a click live, like everything is done to a click,
it's just so tight.
and it means so that was an important part of how we sync everything together. Folda as well for me was like sort of like just a way to experiment with equipment and see what could be done. So we've got it so that we're self-contained in one rack unit. It's quite a large rack unit, but everything's in there with all our in-ear monitors, all our amps, all the everything to do with the synths, everything, and it runs off a Pro Tools session. So I can basically press play on a Pro Tools session and it will run through our full set, and everything changes. All our amps change sounds automatically, all the synths change sounds. We send MIDI code to our lighting guy he can then start sequences which are going to be in time with our click. So it just makes it a bit easier to kind of sync everything together, which is quite important in that style of music. I think like Folda shows totally different when you don't have lights. Like it's quite a lot about the atmosphere and
Just enhancing the music. Almost
yeah,
as
and
well.
it's almost like if you go to a club and just like the lights are on, it's not the same. You know, like
a
it's
weird experience.
yeah. So we had that in the back of our minds constantly about like, so if we're going to do shows, it needs to be like over the top. We don't really mind if we're playing to 100 people or 1,000 people. Like it needs to be the same level of show.
How does that work for festivals though? Because you've done Belladrum.
We've done Belladrum, and we've done Expo North. We're lucky enough to play the BBC Introducing stage at Expo North at the Ironworks, which was great. We did, obviously for festivals we can't bring the same, the rig comes with us, but not the lights and everything. I mean, the odd opportunity that we do get to bring a lighting engineer is we don't get to bring our full light setup. You know, it's like
a condensed version.
It's a condensed version, and it's making the most of what's there. That's why I kind of wanted to get everything like synced up, so it means that it's very easy to do. You know, it could be the case of just bringing 2 lights along with us, and it's all run off the same session, so they just operate themselves. So it's almost like it doesn't take any time or space to set up. So that was the sort of idea behind it all, and we wanted to make sure that we had all that. Well, it was possible to do it, and also how to do it on a budget, basically, because we were a new band. We don't have any money behind us. We don't have a label. We don't have, we're just doing it ourselves just for fun, really. But
I guess it's when it helps, so you've been able to produce everything and get it sounding exactly how you want.
Yeah. It's I don't think it would be very hard to do it if we weren't doing it ourselves, And I'm like the type of person that will stay up late trying to figure out this one wee thing, how to connect this in like borderline OCD on everything like that. Yeah. But I enjoy it, so it's kind of like.
Do you like struggle to switch off when you leave the studio?
Yeah, all the time. I've not switched off in years. But that's it's a good and a bad thing, because you enjoy it so much that it doesn't feel like you need to switch off. But it's only when you like, if you've been at it for months without a day off, and then when you do get a day off and you manage to switch off, you realize like how much
to do.
Yeah, and how intense it's been, and you're like, okay, that was actually quite good to have a day of taking a dog for a walk and not having to think of music the whole time.
Yeah,
but it's still in the back of your brain. I think that's just being a musician, no?
I mean, you must be in like 10 till 5 pretty much every day.
Like I try and keep sessions to kind of as close to 10 to 5 as possible, which doesn't always, well, mostly not work out. But like I do try and keep a life outside the studio just so I have another,
Yeah.
And it's good to get away from it. You can definitely burn yourself out, and you end up not enjoying it as much as you should be. But yeah, it's mainly 10 till 5. But I've been, sometimes we'll do sessions that start at 6 o'clock at night until
What time does that go on till?
whenever. Especially with the Folda stuff. Like I've got the Folda guys coming in after this actually, and we're gonna work on some new songs. But like we've all got girlfriends and wives at home, and we've got to get home at some point.
You've got to try and balance it.
Yeah, and it's healthy as well. You can. I definitely if I don't keep on telling myself that, I'll just keep on going.
Yeah.
And then end up burning myself out, and
I mean, you lose all sense of time in here as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of. It's a nice room, but no windows. So
if you took the clocks away, it's almost like a torture room. And the fact that it's like really quiet.
Days must go by quite quick.
Yeah. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because there's no distractions. You're not looking outside, and you have no idea if there's like a, World War III's going on outside, which is good. But it's bad because it's not great for your health. But
it can be good to isolate yourself when you're making something, though, to just kind of
I mean, it's
absorbed by it.
I guess it's the closest thing to getting away from, I guess, your life. Like as a musician coming in and just like this is what you're doing. It's not you're trying to get away from the outside world, and it's because we're so near. We're in Edinburgh and we're quite near the city centre and stuff. It's not like going to a cottage away out in the middle of nowhere, but it's almost like that version of it, as close as you can get without literally doing that.
How do you maintain a focus when you're in the studio? Can you just turn it on and off straight away, or does it take a moment for you to kind of become focused on what you're working on?
No, like I'm just kind of programmed into like when I'm in here, this is what we're doing, and we're it's focus in the studio is quite an odd thing because there's focus on the work, but there's also like you need to focus on the people you're working with as well, and it's quite important to like take breaks and chat to the band you're working with. Sometimes you're thrown into a session where I've done a lot of sessions where it's just been one person in the room if I'm building up like a pop track for an artist or whatever, and I've never met them before, and it can be quite intense and hard to find common ground with these people that you never met them before, and you're straight into making music. So it's good to kind of get to know people, and like that's all part of it as well.
Do advantages come from that though? Like the first time you meet someone, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like it can sometimes be quite scary because you don't know how you're going to work together. And some people just don't like gel, not in the sense that you don't like each other, but just like you're not gelling with ideas or whatever. And thankfully that's not happened a lot. But it is a bit scary sometimes when you've never worked with a band or specifically an artist. If it's just one person, because it's a bit more intense, you might not do things that they like.
Yeah, I imagine though, could it get like frustrating at points? Like if you've got an idea that you're like really passionate about and you bring it to an artist and they maybe just don't vibe with it or whatever.
Yeah, I guess so. And the thing is, I think it's important to remember that if you're producing a track, you're working on their track. It's still their track at the end of the day. I think like as producers, we need to give our opinions over and show them ideas, but it's their choice at the end of the day of what they want to do with it, because it's their music. And like if I think I've come up with a really cool thing in the chorus and they don't like it, I'll try and talk them around to it. But if they're really not into it, then it's not going on the track. It's kind of we'll try and tweak it slightly so they like it more or whatever. But yeah, and that's what's good about working with a lot of repeat customers as well, because you know how each other work, and like
you build up a relationship.
Exactly, and where you can push them and where not to push them. It's quite hard to gauge, for instance, singers. If it's the first time you've met the singer and working with the singer, you don't know how hard to push them. You don't know what is their best take. Like it's a very fine line between like pushing a singer to get the best take or like pushing a singer to like ruin their voice and like them to hate the song. And like,
what is it they say? Is it take 3? Is always so not take 1. You don't get it. Take 2. You kind of get it. Take 3, you get it, but you don't realize you've got it.
Yeah.
Take 4, it's not.
And you end up going back. There's a lot of times that you end up, you're in take 100, and you're like, I think take 1 was the best. But that's something I learned quite early on, is just record everything. Like you don't know if we're doing a guide vocal. So like at the start of the day, what I'll get bands to do is put down a guide track of some sort. So let's say it's a pop artist that has, let's say the main song is written over a piano. We'll track a piano like via keyboard MIDI. not really worry about the sound at all. And then I'll get them to go into the vocal booth and track a vocal, and I'll set that up so it's a real vocal. Like I'll put a good mic on them and, you know, isolate them all and make sure it's all sounding good, because you never know what you're going to get in that vocal take. And that's when they're not thinking about it as well.
Or have you used like the guide?
Sometimes, yeah, like parts of it. Or I'm pretty sure there was a Forest Fires track that we did on the last album that Scott went in and did a guide vocal, and I'm pretty sure it's the vocal take that is actually used. I'm pretty sure it's the track Hollywood. I think it's like one of their best tracks. It's like really short, in your face, like this is what
like
we're
a raw
about.
vocal take that
Yeah.
you got.
And,
I guess it's like when you hear about bands using parts from demos, like in the I think it was the last Catholic Action song that came out was just done in his bedroom.
Yeah.
And they went into a studio and tried to do it.
And didn't sound the same, yeah.
So they just kept that one.
Yeah.
Like Fall Out Boy as well.
Why not?
That song, Thanks for the Memories.
Yeah.
Half that's like done on GarageBand, like from the demo.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, it's all about the vibe of it and what it sounds like. As long as there's not something like wrong with it, like it's distorting too much, even that could be cool. You know, there's no right or wrongs in it. But if you've captured something, sometimes it's, you know, the weirdest takes, or the take that's got. I mean, I've had people do takes with, you know, like chewing gum in their mouth, and you can hear chewing gum all over it, but it's a really good take, and we've got the vibe of it, and it's like, does it matter? Is that a talking point of the song? And people are like, oh, that's quite cool, like, why have they done that? Or, you know.
I guess it comes back to the music's all about honesty.
Yeah.
And that you've got to just try and get the most honest and, like, real sounding take.
Yeah. And that's totally, like, genre specific, because, like, especially in pop music, like, you're going for, like, an artificially good take, if you know what I mean. Like, nobody sings like that from start to finish. You know, that's built up, and it's quite obvious it's built up from multiple takes, and there's like a word taken from this take and that take, and that works in a sort of really processed song. But, you know, if you're doing like an acoustic, like really intimate thing, that's not going to work. Yeah, okay, there might be a duff note somewhere or something that's not quite right, but that's what makes it cool. You know, that's what gives it a bit of personality. And I think pop music is going back to sort of that as well. It's becoming less a computer doing it and more about a performance, and that's what kind of makes it different from the track that came before it and after it, you know.
I mean, it must be tough as well, because a studio it's quite an artificial environment.
Yeah.
So how do you like create an environment in a studio then where people feel like they can kind of get that honesty out?
Again, that it comes with practice for bands. You know, like the bands that I've worked with for ages, just this is a comfortable environment for them. But yeah, if they've never been in before or whatever, like, it's just about making them feel comfortable. And yeah, like maybe the guitarist has never played in the room with me when the amps are all next door and everything, we're recording to a track, as in we've done the drums and bass already. I think it's just a case of, like, you know, just making them feel comfortable, making them feel like it's good to try and get it to sound as good as quickly as possible, so they can see, okay, that's why we're doing this. Oh, that does sound better when we double track this. Or like, yeah, it's just about being comfortable, and I try and make this place as comfortable as possible. Like, I want everything's accessible, and like I like to think that it looks like you can pick up a guitar at any time and, you know, use things, rather than it's not like a display cabinet where everything's like hidden behind.
Yeah, well, it does feel like quite a warm environment. I was sitting in now, and you can see the guitars just kind of sitting out.
Yeah, and I keep everything like live and as quickly accessible as possible. I always keep my drums there and mic'd up, and they're within a minute we can get it going. The same with the vocal. I've got a separate booth at the back that all the vocals are done in, which is, again, it's all hooked up, ready to go. The guitars, all the amps they're not on, but they're, you know, within minutes we can get going, and that's I feel it's quite a good workflow, because you can jump and change between things. If we do a drum track and then, you know, it's 3:00 and we're on to guitars, and this fill doesn't really work with this, the drums are still there.
You can hop back on.
Yeah, I'll keep it all like running as live as I can, to be like, right, let's fill in that snare doesn't work there, the snare fill doesn't work there, let's switch it to a tom fill here or whatever.
Have you had bands write in the studio before?
Yeah, a couple of them. I mean, I think there's writing in the studio, and then there's like tweaking in the studio. Unless you've got a really long time writing in the studio, is very hard.
Unless you're like a band on a record deal.
Yeah, and you've got months.
In a studio. Yeah. That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah. But like, I like when bands come in and they know what they're doing. Maybe they've got 90% of it done, as in like they've got the song done and it sounds cool. They know what the parts. Everyone's kind of worked out stuff, and we're just kind of listening to it and maybe rearranging the song in some way. If there's like a break after the first chorus that doesn't need to be there, stripping it out, or, you know, kind of cutting the bits.
Tightening it up.
Yeah, and then working, like re-recording it all, but working on the sounds. They already know how to gel together, and they know rough ideas of, you know, the guitar needs to have delay on this part and chorus on this part or whatever, and we're kind of like helping them through that. And then writing harmonies or writing other guitar parts to supplement the guitar parts they've got there, or even adding in, like, if they're a guitar band. I guess since starting Folda and like getting into that mindset, I love pop production. Like, to me, that's just what it should sound like. It's like really quite in your face and like shiny, and
you can hear that come through in the music though. That kind of sense of passion and like love.
Yeah, and even for a rock band, I'll try and be like, right, look, let's try and, like, I know it's all guitars in this band, but let's try like a layer underneath the guitars and see what it sounds like of like a synth, or like a really brutal subby bass.
I mean,
synth.
Pop production is often the most interesting.
I completely agree. Like, there's pop as a genre is so wide. Like, you can have a hook on a saxophone, on a synth, on a guitar, on a vocal, on a chopped up thing. It can be anything.
Tame Impala, a pop artist. Like,
yeah, it's incredible. Like, it's so interesting, and there's no rules, and that's what I like about it. And I think rock bands are moving, and they have been moving towards that for ages. Even bands like Bring Me the Horizon and stuff like that are all like, that's pop production completely. And it sounds great.
But it can be cool to see how it like translates and like meshes together.
Yeah.
You can get really interesting like juxtapositions between like a rock band and pop production.
Yeah, I remember
really
probably the first time that I'd heard something similar to that was like really old Enter Shikari stuff. And
such
like,
a good band.
Yeah. And they would be like a really heavy band, but then all of a sudden it'd be like a trance synth come out of nowhere, and you'd be like, what the hell is that? And it was so interesting that, and whether you like them or not is another thing, but it's the production on it's like great, and the way they've worked that in is so interesting.
I mean, they've got pop melodies often like at the heart of their choruses.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, a good song is a good song. You dress it up in different ways, and it's still a good song. And it's, I guess, production is the same. Like, you can produce a song in so many different ways, and if it's a good song, it'll, you're serving the production towards the song of whatever vibe the band wants to go down, or whatever you think it should go.
When you're listening to music now, has it spoiled it a bit?
Yeah,
you must be listening out for everything.
Like, lots of people ask, like, what music do you listen to? And it's like, I don't listen to any music. Like, I try and not listen to music when I'm listening to music. But yeah, there's always an idea, or you hear something, even watching TV shows, and you hear music and you're like, that's a really cool thing. And you've always got Shazam open, being like, who's done that? And like, trying to, like, I like the chord progression here, or I like what they've done in middle eight in this bit. And
well, you've done stuff for TV as well, haven't you? Do you not do like STV and
yeah, I did. Like yeah, again with my last band, the Winter Tradition, we were approached by a agency that wanted to use one of our tracks for This Is Edinburgh campaign thing that was on STV and Channel 4 and lots of other things as well. So that was really interesting to do. They wanted to use our track, but they wanted, they had strict sort of things that I had to abide by. So we ended up having to re-record it and speed up the tempo slightly and do that. So it was quite cool to, I mean, this was years ago now. This was like 6 or 7 years ago, I think. But at that time, I'd never done anything like that before. So I was kind of, they were like, can you do that? And I was like, yep. Trying to like go on Google to be like, how the hell did it? So, but it got played for about a year and a half, I think, on cool. On the sort of prime time adverts between like Coronation Street or something like that. And it was quite weird because, you'd be watching something on like 4OD or something, and then our song would pop up, and we were like, that's still weird. But it was cool. I learned a lot from doing that, and just working for people that weren't bands. They
it gives you a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah, and just like kind of learning how to talk to people that maybe don't necessarily understand music as much as people in bands do, or thinking of it in a different way, and trying to translate what they're trying to mean.
Did that ever carry over to the stuff you do with bands as well?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, most bands are all on the same page, and then they, if we say that needs to be more, I mean, a classic one that everyone hears is like, oh, that needs to be warmer or whatever. But everyone knows in bands what that means. Whereas if you said that to some guy that was doing like a TV advert, they may take something different from that. So it was a bit tough to try and translate, and also for them to translate what I was trying to say.
Have you ever done anything for like a film or like a TV show as opposed to an advert?
No, we did. I mean, quite a lot of the songs I've produced have been used in TV shows, but I've never like. The only thing I've done for like composition for things was I did a thing for Mercedes years ago. They had like, I can't remember what the car is now. It was an SLS.
I'm not a car guy. I'm not sure.
It was like it's like their really top end sports car. It was my friend that was doing a video for them, and he was like, "Oh, maybe you can get involved in. I've to create like it was just an online advert thing for them. He was going to create a video for them, and he wanted me to try and do something with the audio. So we went out to Mercedes in Edinburgh and literally got to play with this like £250,000 car for a day. So I recorded like lots of sounds off it. Have you ever seen the We Buy Any Car advert where it's like all the sounds of the doors shutting and stuff?
Yeah,
like that? So
yeah.
they basically did that before that was before that came out. And it was kind of So we basically made a wee song out of the car sounds from the car, and so they used that. And then we did a couple other things as well where it was like composition work for car adverts and stuff like that. But that was quite fun. It's quite fun to write within a brief and know where your boundaries are and know that they want it to sound more like this and not like this. And you're being creative, but you're not being totally creative, if you know what I mean. Like you have got lines that you need to be in. So that was something totally different. But I've not done much of that work in a while now.
Yeah.
No.
I was weird because I was listening to, when I was on the way over, I was listening to the last Folda EP.
Mm-hmm.
Straight after I listened to like the Billie Eilish Bond theme that just came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of trying to think like, what would a Folda Bond theme?
That'd be quite fun, actually. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's kind of similar, isn't it? Like writing within a brief, it has to sound a certain way and stuff. But that track's cool. Like that's
the Billie Eilish one.
Yeah.
I think it is a good song.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a big fan of the Sam Smith one before it.
Yeah.
Did you hear the one Radiohead did though for like the last one?
Yeah.
It didn't get.
Yeah.
I thought it was a better song.
Yeah, I think so as well.
One.
It's always hard to do something like that because you're gonna loads of people are gonna hate it, whatever you do, and loads of people are gonna love it. And it's just the horrible world we live in now with like
everyone's got a voice.
Yeah, exactly.
You used to have to like obviously write a letter to complain, but now
it's on Twitter.
Pick it up and type for like 2 seconds.
I know it's awful, but like you've got to please everyone or try and please everyone, and that's why. But
it's a bit of pain being like a massive band because you must just get so much shit.
Oh yeah, I completely. It's it's quite funny how bands kind of like strive to get to like fame, I guess, and then once you're there, I can imagine it's quite a horrible place to be at points. Yeah,
well, I guess it's like that. Is it Elliott Smith?
Mm-hmm.
His lyric, "Everybody's dying just to get the disease."
Yeah.
Fame, like.
Yeah. I know, and I don't know if you've seen the new Taylor Swift documentary. It's on Netflix.
I'm not a massive
Taylor
Swift
fan. I mean, again, I like the production on it, but like there's quite there's a point in that where she's like, waiting to hear if she's been nominated for whatever Grammys or whatever, and she isn't, and she was last year, and she's like absolutely gutted and stuff. And it's a constant, like, musicians are like one of the only people that are constantly under like being compared and being put up for this, and compared to stuff you've done before, or like
you're only as good as your last song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it could be horrible. Like,
I could
try and stay in that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah,
be famous.
Yeah, well, yeah, it must be horrible.
When did you? So you've been in here. What is it? 10 years?
In this room, and I've been doing in here for probably about 5.5. But I had my first studio was actually in my parents' house, so they were kindly enough to like give me.
A bedroom studio.
Yeah, it was like their front sort of dining room thing which had like a conservatory off it, and I built or like kind of made a studio in there, which was almost probably about the same size as this room here, but that was like the full studio. So I tracked everything in there, like drums, guitars, right there. And
you have a lot of folk that work from like outside their front rooms, though.
Yeah, and again, it's not. This could quite easily be a bedroom. It's not.
That must be worse for switching off though. Like it's in your house. You can be. You don't even have to like go home. Like you can be in there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I didn't like about working. I was a lot younger then, but also I didn't feel like it was a proper job. When I moved in here, I was like, okay, this is like a proper job now, and like
you've got your proper kind of workspace.
Yeah, and it's cool to shut the door and come away from it.
Yeah,
and try and switch off.
What sort of stuff do you do to switch off?
Take the dog for a walk. I'm really into cars, so driving lots and not much. Should probably do more. I mean, it takes up a lot of time. We're usually knackered, get home and sleep, wake up and do it all again. I don't play any sports or anything.
Goals that you kind of set yourself in a year to like work towards?
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, we discussed before you switched the mics on about like my year's quite set quite far in advance. So like
booked up, which is
great. But sometimes it's you can forget to plan for things. It's very easy just to let that continue on. And yeah, you're right. Like sometimes you need to say stuff like, okay, this year I want to, whether that's like buying more equipment or like change something that you're doing or change it up a bit.
Yeah, I guess you've got to constantly evolve the setup to kind of keep up.
Yeah, you've got to constantly find the sound that people are after. Bands like the 1975, which is always brought up everywhere, but like they're quite a good one to watch for, because you can guarantee that 20 bands that you'll be working with that year will want a sound similar to them or whatever they're doing on their new album. You're like, that vocal effect's really cool. How'd you get it? And you need to know, oh, that's this. you need to do a lot of research. I mean, I'm constantly on YouTube watching stuff about how they've created this and how this, not just the 1975, but like everyone.
What other bands? What are the kind of top bands people come in and say, what is something like this?
So the 1975 was a big one, and they still are a big one. Arctic Monkeys was a big one as well when they came out. Pop stuff like people like Halsey, and there was an Imagine Dragons phase for a while with that sort of big.
They're an interesting band production wise as well. They sound massive.
Like. Yeah. But without that much going on, it's like it's very well thought out stuff.
What's the second album they did? Is it Smoke and Mirrors or something it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a cool album, production wise. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on.
And Bon Iver as well is a big one. Like, he's a good example of like, it doesn't have to sound, like specifically his first album doesn't have to sound great for it to be great. Like, there's technically you could probably pick that record apart and be like, that doesn't sound great there, or that's slightly out of tune there, or whatever. But there's something about that album it just works. And
I guess it comes down to good songs.
Yeah,
if you have a solid structure and songwriting,
and just the feel of it, it puts you in a place, and you're like,
it's an intimate record. It's quite
and even like his later stuff, like people are still like, oh, how's that vocoder sound? And I'm like, I don't know, I wish I knew. But
it's the same with Royal Blood, managing to get a bass to sound like a guitar.
Yeah, well, that was another one. Royal Blood was like quite a when all the two pieces came out, and
Black Keys as well, I guess.
Yeah. But the 1975 have been one that's kind of stayed through everything, because they'll almost reinvent for every album and like stay relevant. And I guess to a certain extent Coldplay as well.
I really like their new record that came out last year.
There's a lot of hate for Coldplay, but actually, they're very good at what they do.
And production wise, it's always impeccable.
Yeah, you can't fault it at all.
I love the first three albums, and then the last album.
Yeah.
The ones in between.
Yeah, I mean, there's the songs on it that have done well off it, and then the songs that you're like, okay, that's definitely an album track, but they know what they're doing and they know what where they're trying to get to. And
I mean, probably maybe not the biggest band in the world.
Probably, yeah. I don't know if you've seen their documentary. That's quite an interesting one.
Wait, they do one after like every album.
Yeah, the one that was on Amazon Prime. I think it's their latest one.
I need to watch. Is that the one about A Head Full of Dreams?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the stage show for that like mental. Yeah.
And they were just like, what do we do now? Like, we've done the biggest thing we can ever do.
Well, they didn't tour the last record, did they?
Yeah,
because of climate change.
Yeah, I know, and that, and also I think that what I took home from the documentary that they had was that
they can never top it.
They can't top it, so they're not there. And again, maybe that's due to like their own personal need to like strive to be better or whatever, or the people being like, that wasn't as good as the last one.
Yeah,
and when it costs you like millions of pounds to be on a show.
Well, didn't they do like a few shows where it cost them millions and they didn't make any money on the show?
Probably,
like they broke even and that was it.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, their show is insane. If money wasn't no issue, like that's what Folda shows would be like. I would try and.
Well, the 1975 I kind of done that as well with a massive.
That stage show was incredible. I was so gutted. I was meant to be on the guest list for when they were in Glasgow, and for some reason something fell through last minute or whatever, and didn't make it. And
been there quite a few times as well.
Yeah, and I mean I've seen videos of it, and it's
I was at that show. It was pretty.
Yeah, it's a game changer with like it looked like multiple different sets. With like they're really clever with the way they use their visuals and all the blocks and like the.
But then it's how do you go above that as well?
Well, yeah,
like,
they can't better
do that again.
Yeah, they can't do it again, and how are you going to better that? I mean, I'm sure they'll figure a way out. I mean, they had a treadmill through it. What, are they going to have 2 treadmills now, or like I don't know, like.
Unless you like a 360. Well, what was it? U2 did like a 360
one, yeah.
Well, it's actually the band is like in the middle.
I think so, yeah. And the audience around them, yeah.
How does that work though?
I don't know.
Surely some people are going to be facing the back of the band.
Yeah, and where do you put the PA? Or is there like multiple? I remember Shikari doing like a 360 tour where they had like 360 sound tour, where they set up like the PA throughout the whole of the venue and they had stuff panning around the whole thing. And I think it's very much of like a.
Does it sound better or what's?
I never saw it, but I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah,
because that's totally dependent on where you're standing in the audience.
I mean, even in a room where it's not a 360 PA, the sound can vary massively depending on where you're standing.
That's. I mean, I could never get into live sound purely because of that. That would stress me out. Yeah, I would hate it.
Yeah, it must be so tricky in the middle of a show as well because you've no idea what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It could sound different on stage. It could sound different when you're on the sound desk, and it could sound different in the middle of the room.
Yeah, you just that's these guys are like they've been doing it for years and they're trained and they just have to. It's just experience, and they know what they're doing.
Do you have a sound engineer that you stick to for Folda? Or?
Yeah, we try to stick to one of my good friends, Liam.
You want someone who knows the sound, and knows what you want.
Yeah, and we've worked with him for years with the last band as well, and like, he's a good friend, so he knows like I would trust him with our sound.
Did you ever look at getting into doing live sound, or were you always
No.
going to be a producer?
I hate live sound. It really stresses me out thinking about not getting another shot at it. Like in the studio, I always say to bands, like, some people come in and they freak out in the studio, and it's like, this isn't the time to freak out. Like, we've got as many takes as we want. We can edit this to hell. We can do this.
Do it till you get it right.
It's live. You need to freak out because you've got one chance at it. And it's the same on the other side from, doing live sound. If you mess up or...
Have you had a bad show before? Or
with Folda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just technical difficulties?
Difficulties, yeah. Like,
that must be even more frustrating though, because it's not something you're doing, it's just something you don't have any control
yeah,
over. Going wrong.
I stupidly updated my laptop, which has all our stuff on it, like a week before a Folda show, and I'd thought I'd ironed all this stuff, and we ended up having to change interfaces really quickly and stuff because my old interface wouldn't work with it again and all this sort of stuff, and so our rehearsal room's right above my studio, and we were due to rehearse that evening or whatever, and I had the Folda like session running for 7 hours on a loop to see if it would crash, and it was fine. It was all
Didn't
good.
Crash.
Went upstairs, rehearsed it, crashed on the during the first song whilst we were doing it. So I was like, "What? Like, how's that happened?" And I was like, "Well, that's just a one-off." And then we had the show the next day or whatever, and during soundcheck, it crashed again, and that's when I was like, "Right, this is an issue," and it crashed twice during the set, and it was in Edinburgh. It was like a hometown like headline show with like 300 people there, and scarily enough, like, because my wife and a lot of our friends were in the audience, and they're like honest with us. Like, I've always said, like, be honest with your feedback, because it's the only way that we'll get feedback. Don't just say, "Oh, that was amazing, it was the best thing ever," because it wasn't. And I was like, "Did you even notice?" And she was like, "No." So I was like,
that's frightening though.
It's good. Like, it's good that you didn't notice, but what?
All that work you've put in.
Yeah, does it matter?
Notices when it crashes, yeah.
But that's just because we don't have the budget to run like a dual system that can switch to another one, or
Yeah. What did you do when it did crash?
We just had to finish the song. Luckily, it was at the end of a song, like the last sort of 30 seconds or whatever. It crashed it the best bit it could have, probably. So at least it was being kind of considerate. But no, that's the only downside about, well, one of the downsides about doing like an electronic-y thing that you rely on technology for, is that might happen.
Does playing live change the way you think about recording things though, and producing things?
I don't think so. Like, I mean, songwriting wise, maybe, like, especially, well, for Folda stuff, we'll think about how, like, we'll write a song that we're like, okay, when we do this live, this can be a part that the lights can go off at this point. Like, it's quite, we think about the whole thing as a whole, yeah. So yeah, I guess so. But maybe that's us thinking about, like, we've already done the song and thinking about the live show afterwards. I'm not really sure, but we try and think of it as a whole and try and get, like, I wanted like smells and stuff like that to come out, and like
kind of like 4D in the cinema.
Yeah, like, I'm really into that. I remember seeing Bon Iver like a while ago when he was doing the Bon Iver album, the one with Perth on it and stuff. Like, it was really, the set, they had loads of people on stage. It was huge, and the set, they had the stage supporting them, which was really cool. But when they came off stage, the whole set like changed, and you could tell it was their show. And even it smelled different. They must have like lit incense or I don't know what they did, but I was just like, this is cool. Like, I always think the aim of a show is like, people have been to the Mash House loads of times and seen a band, but you want people to remember your show, like how it transformed in some way,
like
not just another band.
I saw Gengar at Toots the other night, and they had like plants and stuff on stage and like ferns. And
yeah, and that's cool because you remember that, and it didn't look like King Tut's usually does. So it's like it's like your own stamp.
And vibe.
Yeah, which is it's just as important as the music, I think.
I think especially now when people have access to all music and you don't need to buy a record, people can access millions, billions of songs.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find another way to stand out.
Exactly. And it's fun, it's like, it's just a different thing. People are not there just to listen to you, they're there to watch you, and like, you need to aid that. It's almost like, you put full production into your music, so why not do it to the whole show,
It just adds another layer to it.
Yeah. And especially I think with like sort of pop stuff, it needs to be like, that is quite a big part in it. And like bringing up like Taylor Swift or something, again, you go look at her shows, there's like a lot of money spent on that, but it's like a performance, you're there to like watch it, because otherwise you just listen to it on Spotify or whatever.
It's weird going from that seemed like a 4-piece band in Sneaky Pete's though.
Yeah.
To like the levels,
Yeah. But there's nothing to say in Sneaky Pete's why you can't, not to the same extent, but like try and do something different.
Well, I was speaking to Craig on the last podcast because we were both at the Cola gig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
A catwalk that came out.
And why not?
No, I've never seen anyone do that before. Yeah. It's so interesting.
Exactly. And that's what I would always encourage bands to do is like try and just, do something cool.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like bored of watching bands in sticky beats or whatever, so do something that's going to change it up. That could be anything,
It's the same when we've got another zine launch coming up in July.
Mhm.
We're doing it's like a record shop above and below. You've got the venue
Mhm.
in Aberdeen, and I've been trying to figure out how do I do something different with the stage, because
Mhm.
it's a fine stage, it's elevated,
Mhm.
but I want to make it look a bit interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all part of playing live, I think, and or like if you're launching something or whatever, you need to. It's all an image. It's all part of the same thing, and people will expect it from you. Like if they're a lot of it's about like giving a perception that you're bigger than you are as well. That goes a long way, and just believing that your band is. If you've sold, like, let's bring it back into Sneaky Pete's. If you sold 90 tickets for Sneaky Pete's, like you like own the place.
Yeah.
That's make it your show. This is like people are here to see you. Yeah, it's 90 people, but that's all it holds. So this is your space for tonight, and you try and do something different with it and make it as best as it can.
Yeah. I guess it kind of ties back into what you're saying as well with Folda, about how you had it from the start,
Mhm.
control and everything, like the image of it.
Yeah.
Things like that. Are you quite into the business side as well, like with social media and everything?
Yeah. I hate the business side of it, but it's like
it's a necessary evil.
It's part of the parcel, yeah. And it's we were lucky that we had a lot of contacts through just bands we've been in before, so we almost had the network to like we knew the people to speak to do.
It's like you've been working toward it for quite a while.
Yeah, and people like Vic Galloway and stuff were like really good at playing our tracks like first, and like he was really into the band, and he named us ones to watch for last year, I think it was, which we ended up just releasing one song in.
Have you got much else coming up soon?
We're writing just now, yeah. I mean, just life just got really busy, and like Folda is always a fun thing for us. Like we really enjoy doing stuff, but it's a fun thing for us,
It's nice to have something like that though.
Yeah,
that you can come back to. There's still pressure on it, but
yeah.
It's something where you can kind of relax and experiment
well, that's
a bit
it,
and have fun with it.
And we didn't want it to be too stressful. And music is stressful at points, but when it's getting too stressful, you need to try and change something up about it, because it's not your main. It's not a job for you, and you're doing it for enjoyment. And yeah, cool. We'd all love to, be successful and all the rest of it. But like realistically, we're doing it for fun, and like it needs to be fun.
That's when the best stuff can come out, though.
Yeah, exactly. There's no pressure, and you're just like, cool. This is what I want to do. Like if people like it, cool. It's when people, you get totally bogged down in it, and it's like, it doesn't become fun.
You must see like the full spectrum of bands come in here as well, where bands that take themselves really seriously, and bands who do treat it a bit more like fun.
And treat it seriously, but you have to have fun doing it. Like why are we doing it if not? Nobody's forcing your arm to like make a record. It's like it's meant to be fun. Yeah, and you're right. Like that's when the best stuff comes out. It's just people making music and like putting their ideas down, and it's not like that's what it is. It's not about like, oh, we have to abide by this because this guy won't play this if we don't have this in it. And like it's good to be conscious of that, because you do have to kind of select the path you want to go down. It's all about fun at the end of the day. If you're not enjoying it, then you need to do something to switch up to enjoy it again.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good note to kind of wrap us up on.
Before
we go though, I thought we'll have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke a bit about Bond earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Best Bond theme. Are you quite a big Bond guy, or?
I mean, I've seen quite a lot of Bond films. I wouldn't say I'm a massive, huge fan. I don't know. I think the Adele one's quite good.
Skyfall.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
I don't know, what is there? 25 Bond films now? 26.
I can tell you. Yeah.
I think the next one's 25.
I
actually really like the Chris Cornell one.
Yeah.
For
let's go. Yeah.
Casino Royale. I'd like to hear them bring something back like that, like a bit rocky. But...
Yeah. I mean, the Billie Eilish one's good. The production on it's great. Like it's and everything she's done is cool.
Is it Phineas that does all the production?
Yeah. And there was a big thing about like how that one, like what best production or best recorded album or some award, and lots of people
does it all in his bedroom, doesn't he?
Loads of people were kicking off. It can't be. It wasn't done in a proper studio and stuff.
It sounds impeccable though.
Yeah, and it was. I was watching a video the other day with Tom Lord Alge, who's like a big mixer, and he was like, "It doesn't matter. Like, why does it matter? It was done in his bedroom. Like, what's that got to do with it? If it sounds good, it sounds good. It doesn't matter how they got there." And I'd take that on board a lot with production wise. It doesn't matter how you get there. If it sounds good, it sounds good. Like it doesn't matter if we've had to take 150 takes at this or reverse this and put a big boom sound underneath every snare or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like if it sounds good, it sounds good. And yeah.
Could you ever see yourself going back to a home studio? Or
if I got a big enough house that I could I could have a decent. The thing is, like, because I've been here for so long, I'm really used to working in a space like this.
It's in a safe environment.
Yeah, and I would miss the space if I went back to a smaller place. I would miss it. But yeah, I mean, like, I would like if when I'm older, have a space where I could put a studio in, and yeah, cool. But I'm pretty content here. You know, it's a nice place to be, and the building needs to be warmer. that's my only issue with this.
It's alright in here.
It's fine in here. Yeah, it's just going to the
bit,
toilet. You have to put a jacket on. You have to wrap up for winter. But
get the gloves and scarf on.
Exactly. But
yeah. But thank you very much for coming on, man.
Yeah,
I really
no worries at all.
appreciate it, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cheers, man.